The wagon wheels had stopped turning 3 days ago. Sarah Mitchell pressed her palm against the splintered wood, feeling the desert heat radiate through the abandoned frame. Her parents lay beneath stones a mile back, victims of fever that had swept through their small party like wildfire. The other families had moved on at dawn, unable to wait any longer. They had left her water, some dried meat, and hollow promises to send help from the next settlement. She was 16 years old and completely alone. The sun hammered down on the New Mexico territory with merciless intensity. Sarah's lips were cracked and bleeding. Her cotton dress, once blue as morning glories, was now gray with dust and stained with the earth she had clawed while burying her mother. She had cried all her tears into that dry ground. Now she simply existed, moving on instinct, following the direction the wagons had gone because there was nothing else to do. When the wolves found her, she was barely conscious. She had collapsed near a dried riverbed, her canteen empty for hours. Through the haze of heat exhaustion, she saw them emerge from the scrub brush. 7 gray shadows with amber eyes. The lead wolf approached slowly, its massive head low, testing the air. Sarah closed her eyes and waited for the end. She was too tired to be afraid anymore. At least it would be quick. At least she would be with her family again. The attack never came. Instead, she felt hot breath on her face, then the rough warmth of a tongue against her forehead. When she opened her eyes, the wolf was so close she could see flecks of gold in its dark pupils. It made a low sound, almost like concern, then turned and trotted toward a line of cottonwoods in the distance. The others followed. The lead wolf stopped, looked back, and waited. Sarah understood. She forced herself to stand on trembling legs and followed the wolves toward water. They led her to a spring hidden in a cluster of rocks. Sarah fell to her knees and drank until her stomach ached. The wolves sat in a semicircle around her, watching with an intensity that felt almost human. When she finally lifted her head, dripping and gasping, she noticed the rider. He sat motionless on a painted horse at the top of the ridge, silhouetted against the burning sky. Even from a distance, she could see the feathers in his long black hair, the bow across his back. A Lakota warrior. Sarah had heard the stories around campfires. Stories of savages and scalps and burning wagons. Fear shot through her exhausted body like electricity. The warrior descended the ridge with fluid grace. The wolves did not scatter. They simply shifted their attention from Sarah to him, tails wagging slightly in recognition. He dismounted in one smooth motion and approached her slowly, hands visible and empty. His face was younger than she expected, perhaps 20 summers, with sharp features and eyes that missed nothing. He spoke in a language she did not understand, his voice low and steady. When she did not respond, he switched to broken English. "You come," he said, gesturing toward his horse. "Stay here, you die. No water tomorrow. No food. Animals come at night." His eyes flicked toward the darkening horizon where the sun was beginning its descent. "Bad animals. Not like these." He indicated the wolves with a tilt of his head. Sarah looked at the wolves, then at the vast emptiness surrounding them, then at the warrior. Every story she had ever heard screamed at her to run, to refuse, to choose death over the fate that surely awaited her in a Lakota village. But her mother's voice echoed in her memory, something she had said during the fever dreams. "Pride is a luxury, Sarah. Survival is not." The warrior extended his hand. After a long moment, Sarah took it. The Lakota village spread across the valley like a constellation of hide and smoke. Dozens of teepees stood in careful arrangement, their peaks pointing toward a sky turning purple with dusk. Sarah rode behind the warrior, whose name she had learned was Tashunka Whitco, though he said the white men called him Crazy Horse. She clutched his waist to keep from falling, her body swaying with exhaustion and fever that had begun to climb through her bones during the ride. Eyes followed them as they entered the village. Hundreds of eyes. Women stopped their work. Children ceased their games. Warriors emerged from their lodges, hands resting on weapons. The silence was suffocating. Sarah felt the weight of their stares like physical pressure against her skin. She was a white girl in a Lakota village, wearing the clothes of the people who had driven them from their lands, who had broken treaty after treaty, who had brought disease and death. She expected violence. She expected rage. What she received was stranger. An elderly woman stepped forward from the crowd. Her face was a map of wrinkles, her hair white as winter snow, her eyes sharp as obsidian blades. She wore a dress decorated with intricate beadwork and quillwork that must have taken years to complete. She spoke rapidly in Lakota, her voice commanding. Crazy Horse responded with equal intensity. They argued while Sarah sat frozen on the horse, understanding nothing except that her fate was being decided. Finally, the old woman raised her hand for silence. She approached Sarah and studied her with an expression that was impossible to read. "I am Winyang Ota," the woman said in surprisingly clear English. "Grey woman. I speak your tongue. Learned from traders, missionaries, liars who came before." She reached up and touched Sarah's fevered forehead with cool fingers. "You burn with sickness. You are child, alone. These things I see." She turned to address the crowd, switching back to Lakota. Whatever she said caused a murmur to ripple through the gathered people. Some voices rose in protest, but Grey Woman silenced them with a single sharp word. She looked back at Sarah. "I lost daughter to white man spotted sickness. She was your years. Her name was Morning Dove. She sang like water over stones." The old woman's voice cracked slightly, the only sign of emotion. "You will stay in my teepee. You will learn our ways. If you survive the fever, if you prove worthy, you may live among us. If you bring trouble, if you are spy or danger to my people, I will kill you myself." She said this last part with such casual certainty that Sarah had no doubt she meant every word. The next week passed in a blur of fever dreams and strange medicine. Grey Woman tended to her with the efficiency of someone who had nursed many through illness. She forced bitter teas down Sarah's throat, packed her burning skin with cool mud, and sang songs in a language that sounded like the earth itself speaking. Sometimes Sarah woke to find young women sitting near her, watching with curious eyes. Other times she sensed the presence of warriors standing guard outside the teepee, their shadows cast long by firelight. During her lucid moments, Grey Woman told her the rules. "You do not speak unless spoken to. You help with work. You learn our language. You forget white ways. Here, you are nothing until you prove you are something." The old woman crushed herbs with a stone, her movements practiced and precise. "My people are divided on you. Some say kill the white girl, she brings danger. Some say send her away to die. I say give her chance Morning Dove did not have." Sarah recovered slowly, emerging from the teepee on the 8th day. She was weak, thin, but alive. The village had resumed its normal rhythm, though she still drew stares. Children were the boldest, creeping close to touch her strange light hair before running away giggling. Grey Woman put her to work immediately. Scraping hides was brutal labor that left Sarah's hands bleeding and her back screaming. Hauling water from the creek meant carrying heavy containers that made her shoulders burn. Gathering firewood required venturing into the woods where she was terrified of getting lost. But she learned. She learned which plants to gather for food and which would kill you. She learned how to tan hide until it was soft as cloth. She learned to start a fire with sticks when the wind was blowing. She learned Lakota words slowly, painfully, repeating them until her tongue could form the unfamiliar sounds. The women were her teachers, though they were not gentle. Mistakes earned sharp reprimands or mocking laughter. Success earned silent nods. Praise was as rare as rain. At night, lying on buffalo robes in Grey Woman's teepee, Sarah thought about her parents, about the wagon train, about the life she had lost. But those memories felt increasingly distant, like stories someone had told her long ago. This was her reality now. Smoke and leather. Strange food and stranger customs. A language that felt like stones in her mouth. And always, the knowledge that she lived on borrowed time, that any mistake could turn tolerance into violence. She fell asleep each night wondering if she would see another morning. Winter arrived with fury that took Sarah's breath away. The New Mexico territory she had known disappeared beneath snow and ice. The Lakota village transformed, teepees clustered closer together, smoke rising in dozens of columns toward a gray sky. Sarah had been with the tribe for 4 months. Her hands were calloused now, her skin darkened from sun and wind. She understood perhaps one word in 3 of the Lakota language, enough to follow instructions and avoid major mistakes. Grey Woman had given her a buffalo robe and winter moccasins lined with rabbit fur. These gifts came without ceremony or explanation, simply appearing on her sleeping place one morning. Sarah understood this was significant. The old woman did not waste resources on someone she expected to die or leave. Other small changes accumulated. The hostile stares had softened to indifference, then to occasional curiosity. A few of the women had begun including her in their work circles, teaching her beadwork patterns and the proper way to smoke meat. But she remained nameless. In Lakota culture, as Grey Woman explained, names were earned through deeds or given through vision. Sarah was simply the white girl or Grey Woman's ghost child. She existed in a strange liminal space, neither captive nor accepted, neither enemy nor friend. Everything changed the day the hunting party came back without Crazy Horse. The warriors returned at dusk, their faces grim. Sarah understood enough of the rapid Lakota conversation to grasp the essential facts. Crazy Horse had gone after a wounded elk. His horse had stepped in a hidden hole. He was injured somewhere in the foothills, unable to ride, with night falling and temperature dropping fast. A search party was being organized, but the area was vast and darkness was coming quickly. Without fire and shelter, even a warrior would not survive the night. Sarah thought of the wolves. They had been nearby for weeks, shadowing the village, visible on distant ridges. Grey Woman had told her they were not normal wolves, that they were spirit animals, that they came when they were needed and disappeared when they were not. The lead wolf, the one who had first found Sarah in the desert, was unmistakable with its silver-gray coat and intelligent amber eyes. She had seen it just that morning, watching from the tree line. "I can find him," Sarah said in halting Lakota. The warriors turned to look at her. She repeated herself, more clearly this time. "The wolves. They know me. They can track him." A young warrior whose name was Red Thunder laughed, the sound harsh and mocking. "The white girl thinks she commands spirits? She knows nothing of our ways, of our land. She would die within an hour." Others nodded in agreement. But Grey Woman stepped forward, her old eyes studying Sarah with that penetrating gaze that seemed to see straight through flesh to intention. "You would do this?" the old woman asked in English. "You would risk death for him? For the man who brought you here, who you owe nothing?" Sarah met her eyes. "I owe him everything. Without him, I would be bones in the desert." She switched back to Lakota, wanting everyone to understand. "He showed mercy. I show loyalty. This is your way, yes?" Grey Woman was silent for a long moment. Then she turned to the gathered warriors and spoke with authority that ended all argument. Minutes later, Sarah was dressed in the warmest clothes the village could provide, carrying dried meat, flint, and a knife. 4 warriors would accompany her, led by Red Thunder, who made his displeasure clear in every gesture. They moved into the darkness, toward the foothills where the land became a maze of ravines and hidden valleys. Sarah called to the wolves. She did not know if they would come, did not know if the connection she felt was real or imagined desperation. But she whistled the way she had heard shepherds whistle back home, modified it to a longer, more howling sound. And she waited. The warriors watched with skeptical expressions, hands on their weapons. Red Thunder opened his mouth to speak, probably to order a retreat. Then the lead wolf emerged from the shadows. It approached Sarah directly, ignoring the warriors. She knelt and placed her hand on its massive head, feeling the coarse fur, the heat of its body against the freezing air. She pointed toward the foothills. "Find him," she whispered. "Please." The wolf held her gaze for 3 heartbeats, then turned and loped into the darkness. The pack followed. Sarah stood and followed the wolves. The warriors, after a moment of stunned hesitation, followed her. They found Crazy Horse in a ravine 2 hours later. His leg was badly broken, his face pale with pain and cold. The wolves surrounded him in a protective circle, their body heat keeping him from freezing. When they saw Sarah and the warriors approaching, they moved aside but did not leave. Red Thunder and the others carried Crazy Horse back to the village, fashioning a travois while Sarah kept the fire burning. The lead wolf sat beside her the entire time, amber eyes reflecting the flames. When they returned at dawn, the entire village had gathered. They carried Crazy Horse to the medicine man's teepee, but all eyes were on Sarah and the wolves that followed at her heels. Grey Woman stepped forward and spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. She spoke in Lakota, and though Sarah did not catch every word, she understood the meaning. The old woman was giving her a name. Swengmanitu Wing Yang. Wolf Woman. The people repeated it, the name spreading through the crowd like ripples on water. Sarah felt something shift inside her chest. For the first time since her parents died, she felt like she belonged somewhere. The wolves turned and disappeared into the morning light. Their work was done. Spring brought soldiers. The Lakota scouts spotted them 3 days before they arrived, blue uniforms moving across the plains like a disease spreading through healthy flesh. Sarah stood with Grey Woman on a rise overlooking the valley, watching the distant column advance. Her heart hammered against her ribs. 6 months ago, she would have run toward those soldiers, begging for rescue. Now she felt only dread. "They come for you," Grey Woman said quietly. "Word spreads. White girl living with Lakota. They think we hold you captive, or they use you as excuse for violence. Either way, blood will spill unless we are wise." The old woman's face was carved from stone, but Sarah could sense the tension in her frame. "You must decide, Wolf Woman. What are you? White or Lakota? You cannot be both when soldiers come with guns." The column was led by a captain named Thornton. Sarah watched from beside Grey Woman's teepee as he rode into the village with an escort of 20 soldiers, their rifles ready, their eyes scanning for threats. He was young for his rank, perhaps 30, with a neat mustache and the rigid bearing of a man who believed absolutely in his own righteousness. He dismounted and approached the gathered Lakota leaders with the confidence of someone who had never truly faced defeat. "I am Captain William Thornton of the United States Army," he announced in English, his voice carrying across the tense silence. "We have received reports of a white girl held captive by this tribe. I am here to negotiate her release and return her to civilization." He paused, then added, "Peacefully, if possible." Crazy Horse stepped forward. His leg had healed, though he still favored it slightly. He spoke in English, a language Sarah had not known he could speak so well. "No captive here. Only people. People who choose to stay." His eyes met Sarah's across the distance. The message was clear. This was her choice. The tribe would not force her either way. Captain Thornton followed Crazy Horse's gaze and saw Sarah. His expression cycled through surprise, confusion, and something close to disgust. She knew what he saw. A white girl in Lakota dress, her hair in braids woven with feathers, her skin tanned dark, her feet in moccasins. She looked like them. She had become one of them. The captain approached her slowly, his men forming up behind him with weapons ready. "Miss," he said, his voice carefully controlled. "I am here to take you home. Back to your people. You are safe now. Whatever these savages have done to you, whatever they have forced you to do, it is over." He reached out a hand toward her. "Come with me. We will take you to the nearest settlement. You can have a proper life again." Sarah looked at his hand. Clean, soft, the hand of someone who had never scraped a hide or hauled water from a frozen creek. She looked at his face, at the certainty there, the absolute conviction that he was saving her. Then she looked at Grey Woman, at Crazy Horse, at the people who had taken her in when she was dying, who had taught her to survive, who had given her a name and a place. The choice was not difficult. "I am home," she said clearly. "These are my people. I choose to stay." Captain Thornton's face darkened. "You do not understand what you are saying. They have poisoned your mind, turned you against your own kind. You are suffering from some form of madness brought on by trauma and captivity." He gestured sharply to 2 of his soldiers. "Corporal, private, escort this young woman to her horse. We are leaving immediately." The soldiers moved forward. The Lakota warriors shifted, hands moving to weapons. The air became electric with violence waiting to be born. Sarah stepped back, positioning herself clearly on the Lakota side of the invisible line dividing the 2 groups. Her voice came out stronger than she felt. "If you take me by force, Captain, you will have to fight every person in this village. Men, women, even the children will resist. Is one unwilling girl worth that much blood?" Crazy Horse spoke again, this time in Lakota, addressing his warriors. Sarah understood now. He was telling them to be ready but not to attack first. To let the white men choose whether there would be peace or war. Grey Woman added her voice, and though Sarah could not follow every word, she heard her own name. Wolf Woman. The old woman was reminding the people of how Sarah had saved Crazy Horse, of how the spirit wolves had claimed her as one of their own. Captain Thornton was trapped and he knew it. He could not leave without the girl, not after riding all this way. But attacking would mean casualties, maybe heavy ones, and he would have to justify killing dozens of people to retrieve one girl who insisted she wanted to stay. The politics would be complicated. The newspapers would ask difficult questions. His career could end. Sarah watched the calculation happen behind his eyes. "I will return," he finally said, his voice tight with suppressed rage. "With more men. With orders. You cannot keep her here. She is a white woman and she belongs with white people. This is not over." He mounted his horse with sharp, angry movements. His soldiers followed suit, keeping their weapons ready, their eyes hostile. The column withdrew slowly, every man alert for an ambush that never came. When they were finally gone, disappearing into the distance like a bad dream fading with daylight, the village released a collective breath. But there was no celebration. Everyone understood what had happened. Sarah had chosen them over her own people. That choice would have consequences. The soldiers would return. Maybe with more men. Maybe with different orders. Maybe next time there would be no talking, only shooting. Grey Woman placed a weathered hand on Sarah's shoulder. "You have chosen a hard path, Wolf Woman," the old woman said quietly. "Harder than you know. The white world will not forgive you for this. They will call you traitor, squaw, savage. And my people, some will never fully trust you, will always see you as white. You will walk between two worlds, belonging fully to neither. She squeezed Sarah's shoulder. But you walk it with honor. That is what matters. Sarah nodded, throat too tight for words. She had made her choice. Now she would live with it, whatever came next. The wolf pack returned under a blood moon. Sarah woke to their howling, a sound that raised every hair on her body and pulled her from sleep like a hand shaking her shoulder. She emerged from Grey Woman's teepee to find the entire village stirring, people emerging into the copper-colored darkness. The wolves sat on the ridge overlooking the village, 7 shadows against the crimson moon. The lead wolf threw back its head and howled again. This was not a greeting. This was a summons. Grey Woman appeared beside Sarah, wrapped in a heavy blanket, her face grave. They call for you, Wolf Woman. The spirits do not summon without reason. The old woman's voice carried weight that made Sarah's stomach tighten. When wolf spirits call, you answer. Or you die wondering what you were too afraid to face. Crazy Horse brought Sarah a horse, a strong painted mare with intelligent eyes. He spoke in Lakota, his tone urgent. The wolves call you to hunt. This is spirit business, not ordinary business. Take only what you need. Trust the wolves. They have never led you wrong. He handed her a bow and a quiver of arrows, though Sarah had only rudimentary skill with the weapon. You may need to defend yourself. Not from animals. From something else. Sarah dressed quickly in her warmest clothes, her mind racing with questions she did not ask because she knew there were no answers. In Lakota belief, spirits operated on logic that humans could not predict or fully understand. You followed or you did not. You trusted or you died. She mounted the mare and rode toward the ridge where the wolves waited. Behind her, she heard Grey Woman's voice raised in song, a prayer or blessing in words too old for Sarah to understand. The wolves led her north, away from the village, into territory Sarah had never seen. They moved fast, tireless, their paws eating the distance while Sarah urged her horse to keep pace. The blood moon tracked across the sky, staining everything the color of rust and old violence. Hours passed. The landscape became stranger, more broken, full of twisted rock formations that looked like frozen giants and deep canyons where shadows moved with unsettling independence. Dawn was breaking when the wolves finally stopped. They had led Sarah to a narrow valley ringed by cliffs, accessible only through a single gap in the stone. In the center of the valley stood a massive old oak tree, impossible and wrong because oak trees did not grow alone in this terrain, did not grow this size, did not grow twisted into shapes that suggested anguish and rage. At the base of the tree, Sarah saw what the wolves had brought her to find. A man sat with his back against the trunk. He was white, middle-aged, wearing the remnants of a cavalry uniform. His face was haggard, his eyes wild. Around him lay the bones of animals, dozens of them, arranged in patterns that made Sarah's vision blur when she tried to focus on them. He had a rifle across his lap and a knife in his belt, but his hands were empty, raised in a gesture that was either surrender or supplication. You are her, the man croaked, his voice raw. The white girl they talk about. The one who chose the savages over her own kind. They told me you were real but I did not believe. I did not believe. He laughed, the sound broken and terrible. I have been here 3 days. Trapped. Every time I try to leave, the wolves come. They do not attack. They just stand there, blocking the way, watching. Waiting for something. Waiting for you. Sarah dismounted slowly, keeping the horse between herself and the man. The wolves had spread out, forming a loose circle around the valley. They made no sound, but their attention was absolute. The lead wolf sat nearest to Sarah, amber eyes fixed on the man beneath the tree. Sarah felt a cold understanding creep into her mind. This was not a random encounter. The wolves had hunted this man, caught him, held him, and now brought her to judge him. Who are you? She asked, her voice steady despite the fear crawling up her spine. The man's laugh died. His face crumpled. I am nothing. I was Sergeant James Hackett. 3rd Cavalry. I was at Sand Creek. He said the name like a curse, like a confession. You know what happened at Sand Creek? They do not tell the truth in the newspapers. They say it was a battle. It was not a battle. It was murder. Women and children. Old men. They begged. They showed white flags. We killed them anyway. I killed them. Taz cut tracks through the dirt on his face. I have run for 3 years. Changed my name. Left the army. Tried to forget. But the wolves found me. The spirits found me. And now you find me. Sarah knew about Sand Creek. Everyone did, though the stories varied depending on who told them. The Lakota spoke of it in tones of horror and rage. A village of Cheyenne and Arapaho people, mostly women and children, attacked by Colorado Territory militia and cavalry. Hundreds dead. Bodies mutilated. It was the kind of atrocity that started wars and ended any pretense of peace. And this man had been there. Had participated. Had killed. "Why did you bring me here?" Sarah asked the wolves, though she did not expect an answer. The lead wolf stood and approached the man. It moved slowly, deliberately, until it was close enough to touch him. The man trembled but did not move. The wolf sniffed him, its nose almost touching his face, then turned back to Sarah. In those amber eyes, Sarah saw something that transcended animal intelligence. She saw judgment. She saw the question being asked of her. Gray Woman had told her stories about spirit wolves, about their role in Lakota belief. They were not merely animals. They were teachers, guides, and sometimes executioners. They maintained balance between the world of flesh and the world of spirit. When they hunted those who had broken sacred laws, who had spilled innocent blood, who had damaged the web of life beyond repair. But they did not always kill. Sometimes they tested. Sometimes they offered a choice. "You want me to decide," Sarah said, the realization coming slowly. "You want me to judge him. Why? Why me?" The sergeant looked at her with desperate eyes. "Because you are between both worlds. Because you understand both sides. Because maybe you can see something they cannot." He gestured at the wolves. "They are spirits of the murdered. I see them in their eyes. The children I killed. The women I shot while they ran. They have hunted me and now they offer me to you. White to white. Let it end. Please. Let it end." Sarah felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her shoulders like physical mass. This was not justice as white men understood it. There would be no trial, no jury, no appeal to written law. This was older justice, spirit justice, the kind that operated on debts of blood and honor. The wolves had given her power she had never asked for, authority she was not sure she deserved. She was 16 years old. She was nobody. How could she judge a man's life? But she was Wolf Woman. She had been named by the spirits. She had been claimed by the pack. In Lakota belief, names were not arbitrary labels. They were destiny and responsibility woven together. The wolves would not have brought her here if the choice belonged to someone else. She looked at the sergeant, really looked at him. She saw remorse. She saw guilt that had eaten him alive from the inside. She saw a man already destroyed by what he had done. But she also remembered the stories told around village fires. The children who died. The mothers cut down. The old ones killed while they prayed. "The dead cannot forgive you," Sarah said quietly. "I cannot forgive you for them. That is not my right. But the wolves gave you 3 days. 3 days alone with what you did. 3 days to face yourself. That is its own judgment." She took a breath. "Go. Leave this place. Find the families of those you killed. Bring them whatever you can. Money, food, labor, protection. Spend the rest of your life serving the people you tried to destroy. That is your sentence. Do you accept it?" The sergeant stared at her. Slowly, painfully, he nodded. "I accept. I will. I swear it." He stood on shaking legs. The wolves did not move. He walked toward the gap in the cliffs, every step tentative, expecting attack. The wolves watched but did nothing. When he reached the opening, he turned back once, his face a mixture of disbelief and desperate hope. Then he ran, disappearing into the morning light. The lead wolf approached Sarah. It pressed its massive head against her stomach, a gesture that felt like approval, like acknowledgement. The other wolves gathered around her, forming a circle of warmth and wild power. Sarah sank to her knees and buried her face in the lead wolf's thick fur. She wept, releasing tension she had not known she was carrying. When her tears stopped, the wolves moved away. They walked to the edge of the valley and paused. The lead wolf looked back at her one last time. Then they were gone, vanishing into the landscape like smoke dissolving in wind. Sarah rode back to the village alone. The sun was high when she arrived. Gray Woman waited at the entrance, along with Crazy Horse and many others. They did not ask what happened. They did not need to. They could see the change in her, the way she sat on the horse, the look in her eyes. She was no longer just Wolf Woman in name. She had become it in truth. She had walked between worlds and returned carrying wisdom that belonged to neither and both. That night, around the council fire, Gray Woman told the story of what the wolves had done. She told it in the old way, with metaphor and poetry, transforming Sarah's experience into legend. The people listened in respectful silence. When the old woman finished, the warriors nodded. The women ululated. The children looked at Sarah with wide eyes full of wonder. She had become something rare. A bridge between white and Lakota. A voice for two peoples who desperately needed to understand each other. It was not the life she had imagined when she left Missouri on a wagon train that felt like a lifetime ago. But it was her life now. Her purpose. Her path. And she would walk it, between the worlds, with wolves at her side and two peoples in her heart, until the spirits called her home.